Welcome to Homework Lib.
So in this question, we want to test here if there appears to be that the mean time interval has changed or not when comparing recent to past years. So in this case, if we are just seeing if it has changed or not, our hypothesis should include that they stay the same and they are different. But we don't have a specific direction. We just want to see if they are different or not. So the one that has the equal sign will always be our null hypothesis, and the other one the alternative, always. So in this case, looking at this, the correct option will be item B. Then we can find the task statistic as the difference between the sample mean for each group. Let's put the recent first. So if you consider the 17 observations that you have for recent, if you add them together and divide by 17, you get this value. If you do the same for the other one, but with the 12, not 17, for the past sample, you have 87.67. If I use the data for recent, I can also find the standard deviation for the data, which is 1424, using a calculator. And I want the square of the value, and I divide this by the number of observations for that sample. Then I do the same for the other one. I can also find the standard deviation for that value or for that sample, and I compute the square and divide that by the sample size. This here is the way that we compute when we are not assuming that the standard deviations are equal. So they say that we should not assume that they are equal. So that's why that we have this denominator. If we assume that they were equal, we have a different formula. Okay? So that here will give us 225. So that will be the answer for the task statistic. In terms of conclusion, we have two different ways. We can compute the p-value or use the critical value. What I mean by critical value, when we have a two-tailed task, which is the task when we have the different sign here, we have two critical values, one in the left side of the distribution and one in the right side of the distribution. The distribution that we're using or assuming is the t-distribution because we are considering here two populations in which we don't know the true values for the standard deviations and the sample sizes are not that large. So when we assume that we have t-distribution, then we need to define the degrees of freedom, which is the parameter for that distribution. The degrees of freedom is given by the sum of the sample sizes minus 2, okay? So we have 29 observations in total when you consider both samples, recent and past. If you deduct 2, you're gonna get 27. These two areas, they need to sum up to the level significance or significance level that they are assuming. So because we are considering 0.1 in that situation, this 10% that we have should be equally divided between these two areas. So when we add these two values together, they need to be equal to the significance level. Then we can use that to find these critical values. So that one here is negative 170, and that one is positive 170. If my test statistic is either here or here, we reject the null hypothesis. If you look at this value, it is here because it is smaller than this value. So our decision then is that we should reject because that happened, which means that there is sufficient evidence that the mean time interval has changed. Okay? Now, in terms of like using both of those critical values or both significant levels, we need to see if we're going to reject for both of them or only for one. How can we check that? We can also compute the region in which we reject the null hypothesis for the 1% case. So now this area here is 0.5%, and this is 0.5%. If I use the same t-distribution, now this value here is negative 277, and this is positive 277. So my critical value, which is 225 negative, is not inside that region anymore. Mine is outside. And if it is outside it is not in neither one of those regions, we don't reject. So for alpha equals to 1%, we fail to reject. Okay. So considering this, the correct option for the conclusion in terms of comparing those two significance levels will be item A. We only reject for 10%, but not with 1%.